I'm a firm believer in the idea that life balances itself out so that nobody has ever had more fun than anybody else. Feeling really nauseous and throwing up is very painful, but there's nothing quite like the relief you feel after it's over and the thing that has made you throw up has now been violently expelled from your digestive system. If you break your leg, you might be laid up in bed for 3 weeks, but after that point, a walk in the park has never felt so good. And coincidentally, the terrible episodes of your favorite television show only make you appreciate the best episodes all the more. So let's practice that perfect harmony of pain to pleasure by recanting the top 5 and bottom 5 episodes of Friendship is Magic throughout the last season. It's always been something of a risk for a series based entirely around mass-market toy production to suddenly turn around and start criticizing the business world. You'll never know when Uncle Hasbro will march in and stomp all over that ideal with the cold hammer of reality, but Canterlot Boutique stands out as a very important lesson that you shouldn't continue doing a job that is making you absolutely miserable. A lesson I could have used in all those days spent listening to whiny shitheads over a drive-thru microphone at a Tim Hortons being run by the biggest idiot in the county. Incidentally, it's also a risk to base an entire episode around a joke that is never actually told, a risk with significantly less payoff as your writing has to stand on its moral alone, and that's why we don't invite What About Discord to any award shows. If I wanted to spend 20 minutes being bored while a hack-eyed attempt at a moral is shoveled down my throat, I'd start watching South Park again. There's something to be said about the merits of diplomacy, a lot of very unkind somethings that YouTube would likely object to me saying in a monetized video, but while it may have had guest stars that were about as interesting and pleasant as a sandpaper sponge bath, Party Pooped was certainly an excellent example in the merits of slapstick and unapologetic humor, although I'm pretty sure somebody really ought to get Twilight some anti-anxiety medication before her new position in Equestria sends her into cardiac arrest. You know, I actually hesitated putting Appaloosa's Most Wanted on the worst of list for a grand total of 4 seconds. Should an episode meandering around and doing nothing more than being boring deserve such derision? But then I remember that Friendship is Magic is a comedy, and very specifically not being funny is not something that one should take lightly. I think we're long since past trying to apply any sort of continuity to the cutie mark. It's just a metaphor for puberty, and as such the magical logic behind it is irrelevant. I like Rainbow's antics, as you know. I find her overreactions are particularly funny and that she gets far too much of a hard time from people who have no business offering their opinions on anything. I'm not so fussed about the supposed civil consequences of her actions as they aren't the focus and we can all assume they happened off screen. And then we have Tanks to the Memories offering all that along with reassuring the audience that it's alright to let out your feelings, that you don't have to be keeping them all bottled up inside. If there was ever something to be said about Twilight's Kingdom and Rainbow Rocks, the phrase tough act to follow would be number 1 on that list. You know, whatever it is you think is the thing currently ruining society, whether it's communism, corporations, social justice, Republicans, or lead in the water pipes, it goes without saying that the Cutie map was not a metaphor depicting it, no matter how much your favorite analyst might say otherwise. The Cutie map was a very drawn out and boring episode centered entirely around some unpleasant weasel trying to twist the concept of equality in the name of ensuring her own power over everyone else, already not successfully following Tyrek and her royal majesty, but not even standing as a worthy antagonist on her own. The best feeling in life is discovering something you never realized you liked, and this is why pandering to the desires of the fandom has always been a terrible idea. When the fanbase discovers something they enjoy, they just want that one thing over and over again. The stone unturned is the one that contains the surprise. To that end, Amending Fences deserves all the praise in the world for reminding us all that Twilight was not always the great pillar of friendship that she currently is, and that personal growth requires the willingness to realize your mistakes and learn from them. And the best lessons in Friendship is Magic are the ones that adults in real life are constantly failing to learn. Well, all my bitterness toward fandom pandering certainly gave this away, but Slice of Life deserves an especially long ride on the spanking table. There's a reason it's always been a bad idea to cave into what fans are constantly asking for, because fan desires only work in the short term. I'd really like for Garnet to spend more time on Fuse, because Sapphire's my favorite character, and that would be a terrible idea because that defeats the entire purpose of Garnet as a character. And incidentally, while many fans begged for more background ponies, that didn't magically solve the issue of most of these ponies having the personalities of a deck chair that's been plastered with memes and bad British TV. I agonized a bit over whether to give best episode of the season to this or Amending Fences. I asked which one would make me look like less of an overly sentimental bitch, but that debate went fucking nowhere. So for all its uncomfortable one-liners, the sheer adorable sweetness of Brotherhood Social skyrockets Big Macintosh to the list of ponies I wish I could hug and cements the Apple family as being the cornerstone of good old family togetherness. And speaking of the Apple family, while the best episode of the season had a story that brought together some very long-standing character arcs, our worst episode is one that rushes the end of one, hastily slaps together another, and then decides to cut the time in half by flooding the whole runtime with unnecessary musical numbers. Again. So Crusaders of the Lost Mark was an absolute waste of a good opportunity and a waste of two excellent ideas. Why a 20-minute episode had more musical numbers than the last feature film is something I will never understand. It only makes sense if you're the kind of person who watches too much Family Guy. And that person's me. And this decision still makes no sense. At least Family Guy keeps their musical numbers to a maximum of 1 per 20-minute episode. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about that episode, Lily? You know, that one. Well, I'm hesitant to place it even on a worst episodes list because it's not an episode, it's failure taken physical form. I speak no sarcasm when I say that filling the airtime with those colored off-air bars would have been less of a mistake. So for one time only, I present the Glass of Water Lifetime Achievement Award for total disgust to Do Princess's Dream of Magic Sheep, an award it will hold until a worse episode is ever made. That should be roughly around the time I grow wings and fart rainbows, or DHX hires these two unpleasant fucks.